Good evening, everybody. It is January 22nd, 2000, and that's January 26th, 2026. I am Radio Free Mormon, joined by Rebecca Biblioteca and Bill Reel, and this is the Mormon Newscast. Good evening. We've got a lot of stories to go through, so if we can check out some of those stories right now, here's the headline story. Go ahead, Bill. Thank you. Mormon Doomsday Moms. That was the thing. Mormon
We're moving
Doomsday
too
Moms.
fast.
I didn't do that one. Was that you, Rebecca?
No, I'm not touching anything. You guys are
Okay.
doing your own thing now.
Yeah. You don't need to have your hands to do that. I
That's
know.
right. Get your hand
Bill.
out of the cookie jar.
Mormon Doomsday Moms kidnap children found apparently in an orphanage in Croatia. That's late breaking news. The other stories are going to be as follows. New CSA, child sex abuse civil suit filed in California. LDS temple in the original Dark Sky City. New painting of Joseph Smith unveiled. Injured LDS missionary finally comes home. LDS women blessed or suffering. Polygamy denier witch hunt. Michigan church shooter phoned in bomb threats. The latest on the word Mormon. And finally, former BYU baseball player released from jail. So let's start with that top story, shall we, Rebecca?
Yep, let's get right into it. That is a lot of news. We're going to have to really speed through here. So I want to start out this breaking story with a little bit of an apology because this all started to go down after Thanksgiving weekend. And that was at the same time that all the way Christofferson stuff came out. I had many people email me about this story of a doomsday minded mom taking her kids to Europe and no one knew where they were. And I said, oh yeah, we'll get to that, and we just kind of put it off each week with some of this other stuff. So we have never covered the original story on the newscast. And I just kind of want to apologize to everybody and encourage you to continue sending us news that you find, because eventually we'll get our act together and be able to present it. So thank you guys
This
for
is the
all.
payoff. The trade-off is not having 6-hour long newscasts.
This is true. There is a little bit of a payoff there. So, but we will quickly go over it. I'm sure most of you have been following it. The headlines, and this has made national news, of course, is mom allegedly abducted her 4 children and fled overseas as she feared end times were coming, the police say. And this is why there's a connection to Mormonism. She was raised in the LDS church. She lives in the Salt Lake area. And as we all know, end times rhetoric, stories about Salt Lake being destroyed, things like that. It's kind of baked in. We've all grown up with that. And more recently, we've got Chad Daybell, Lori Valla, we've got Jody Hildebrandt, we've got Ruby Frankie. It's all just there. So this is another part of this, I think, which is really unfortunate.
This mom went all visions of glory on her kids.
Okay, that should have been the headline. I should have let you make my slides. So it says a Utah mother of 4 has been accused of abducting her children, allegedly because she feared end times. And again, this is all going back to when it was going down in December. She took off Thanksgiving weekend, and it took a while for the family to figure out, oh my gosh, what is happening? Because when you have shared custody, it takes a while to sort things out. So the picture there on the left are her adorable children, ages 11 to 3. So cute. And there's a picture of Alicia, that's her name. And she has quite the TikTok presence talking about these kind of end time things, which we'll talk about in a second. Alicia Ann Seymour, 35. She's been charged with 4 counts of custodial interference because she shares custody, right? She had the kids for an extended visit over Thanksgiving and decided to forge passports and leave the country, allegedly. Removing the child from the state after abducting the 4 children and fleeing to Europe. So again, another, brace yourselves. It's the end of days. She had quite the presence. I don't know if we all understood this while the story was unfolding in December, that she was a presence on social media warning about end times and that Salt Lake was going to be the hub. It was going to be destroyed. The court documents show that when police officers went to her house, and they went to the house because a child had not showed up to daycare, and also a babysitter had called the husband, you can see there on the top right, and said, I think the kids are gone, and after kind of sorting through, is this alarmist? They realized, oh my gosh, it really is happening. Now there are 2 fathers. The father on the right, he is the father of the 3 older children. There's another father of the youngest 3-year-old. So we're dealing with, 2 fathers who are extremely worried. So the police couldn't get a hold of the mother. It looks like November 29th is when she allegedly went to the airport and took them. So they instantly, set out missing advisory. And I think at this point is when we all started to kind of pick up on something was happening. So when they were investigating everything, the officers found a notebook in the mother's residence where she made a lot of doomsday kind of statements. And she also talked about how she was going to get burner phones, kind of detailed what she was going to do. You can see down there on the bottom, those are some of her TikToks, just one after the other, voice of warning kind of thing.
Is this
And
all that's coming from her, do you know, or is she repeating the message of somebody else?
That's what I'm not sure. And it's interesting because here she's saying, I had a dream of World War III. I watched a few clips, some of her TikToks, and, it seems to be regurgitated from the kinds of things that we heard from Lori Vallow, especially, and Jody Hildebrandt. The idea, I listened to an interview with her sister-in-law, her ex-husband's sister, and she had sort of fallen along with that COVID vaccine. Chips embedded in people. They're going to turn into zombies when the end of the world strikes and everybody's going to start eating each other. So I'm sorry, but we hear zombie a lot, right? With Lori Vallow and Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, that people can turn, children can be evil. So there must be some kind of stream of this in the Salt Lake area. I'm not kidding. I think there is. Here's some footage from her at the airport as she was taking the kids. And again, she would have had to forge documents, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, RFM, like a felony, right? To forge a passport and take somebody out of the state. I think it is in a custody kind of a scenario.
Yeah, it's a federal offense.
A federal offense. I think that's what I meant. Yep. Thank you. We're so glad you're here to correct us. But yeah, so footage finally captured him. And can you even imagine how concerned these two fathers were and family members? I mean, they have no idea. Some of her TikToks said that the voice of God told her she'd be safe in Italy. They thought she was going to Italy. She did make a phone call to one of the fathers from France and say, I'm here, but she wasn't any of those places. So for the last month and a half,
no God has ever told a woman she'd be safe in Italy.
I feel like you're right. I was in Italy a couple months ago, and yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So that's all we knew. And I think, again, that the story kind of got lost because it was Christmas time and people just weren't focusing, oh, this crazy Utah, what's going on? But this is very serious and very concerning. So suddenly today is when I first heard about it. It's kind of been unfolding over the last couple of days. Breaking news, Utah children taken by Doomsday Mom are found and now in a Croatian orphanage. So I'll explain this to you because it's a little bit confusing. So what happened, I will tell you this story. It's extremely interesting. You can see a picture of the cute dad there and all the kids. So through her TikToks, Alicia connected with a woman who was like-minded, another doomsday kind of person who had fled the United States with her 13-year-old son and was living in Croatia. And this is where Alicia took her kids to stay with this other woman and her 13-year-old son. I don't know what the plan was, to hole up, to wait till the end of the world, but this is why she was in Croatia for the last month or so. So eventually, I think the hero in this story is perhaps this 13-year-old boy. His name is Cage, I believe. I heard on one of the social media posts that I was watching. He started wondering about these 4 kids that had shown up at his house, right? And this woman, like, what's going on? And so he Googled the names of some of the kids. Are you following me with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
The one who was already there.
The one who was already there. And this woman shows up with 4 kids, and here they are, and they're all living together, and they're in this house. And he Googles the name of one of the boys, and of course he found everything, right? There's an international manhunt, right? There's posts, there's pictures, there's articles. And at that point, he alerted his mother and said, did you know, I'm assuming, that these kids here are in our house, this is going on. The mother, I'm just, imagining, probably was like, oh, I did not know that. I did not know these kids were kidnapped. I did not know this was happening. The mother took everybody to the police station. The Doomsday Mom, the 4 kids, herself, and her son.
Wow.
Right? Isn't that interesting? I would think it would be something where you just are like, I don't want to get caught for, I don't want to be complicit in this, right? Because I did not know that the kids were here illegally. So at that point, the 2 mothers were arrested. And I'm wondering why the second mother would be arrested. Maybe just they are trying to sort out the situation. But because of that, all 5 children, the 13-year-old boy and the 4 children from Utah, are all in this, they're calling it an orphanage. I think maybe it's sort of like a I mean, it's not exactly like the foster care system, but it is an institutional home for kids that don't have adults to care for them. So I guess, yeah, an orphanage. I just described it, didn't I? But so fascinating. And a lot of this information I got from an interview I saw with the sister of the husband. So instantly, the husband, ex-husband, and the sister and the ex-husband's fiance, they rush off to Croatia, right? So that they can try to get the kids back, try to talk to the kids, try to find out what's going on. But they're running into tons of red tape, translation issues, lost in translation, language barriers. They're working with the embassy. They're working with U.S. officials to try to regain custody of the kids and be able to bring them back to the United States. And these kids are in this orphanage, which is very different from what you would find in the United States. How did they put it? A different standard of care, which you can probably imagine. And so, the kids are really disoriented. They get to see them 2 hours a day, and they try to make connection. They try to bring them clothes, books, but in this orphanage scenario, everything belongs to everybody. So even if they bring their kids clothes, the clothes are then worn by the other kids. It's just a very different scenario that the kids are, kind of having some struggle in. So they really want to get them out there as soon as possible as they're trying to sort this out. But the mother's in jail, the kids are in this holding place, and they're also really concerned about this 13-year-old boy because he's also in there. He expressed he just wants to go home, right? He wants to go back to America. But apparently his mother is his only relative they've been able to find. So they're trying to see if there's anything they can do for this 13-year-old. They do have a GoFundMe. If anybody's interested, you can just Google, kids kidnapped Croatia. And they talk about how now they're trying to raise funds to be able to stay there as long as they need to, because they're not leaving.
They have an attorney.
I'm hoping that they do. They said the U.S. officials have been really, really helpful, but there's such a language barrier and so many different rules. I hope they have an attorney.
I thought I had read that they had retained one.
Yeah. And I hope that by putting this out there on every platform that, they can get one and they can get this resolved. Again, I think they've only been in this place, not, I think, less than a week. It sounds like it just kind of all broke. But even so, they're concerned because, for example, the kids can all watch YouTube there and there are no parental controls. Their kids are just being exposed to a lot of stuff, I know. And it's just a very different environment. And again, they're age 11 down to 3. I mean, you got practically a baby in there. So it's really difficult. But thank goodness they've been found. And moving forward, hopefully it'll all work out. We'll keep everybody posted. But if you're interested, their GoFundMe is right there. More details about trying to, figure out attorneys and flights and care and, all of that stuff. So any thoughts, you guys, on this? It's kind of a crazy story. And I really did mean to bring it up several newscasts ago, but I just haven't. But at least we're covering it all now with this latest development.
Bill?
Just glad that they got found. Yeah. I'm glad it's a sort of a strange order of events that the kid notices the thing and says something from an outside country and that they're located. And this, I'm sure, will get worked out. It may take a minute, but I'm sure these kids will all end up back in the States. And good for this, I think, heading towards a happy ending, at least in terms of getting back to the responsible parent who, or parents, 2 dads, who don't have these sort of perspectives about the end of times.
I know that's the concerning thing. Where does this end? We've seen so many stories like this doomsday point of view, and it's in the air. I just saw an article today in Daily LDS Living that said, preparing your heart for the second coming. I mean, we're reading about this. It's everywhere. So when somebody in the chat had asked, is the 13-year-old boy kidnapped? Not at all. His mom took him as she can. She has custody to another country because she's afraid of the end of the world. You have to do a lot of things that your parents want you to do when you're a kid. So no, and I'm not sure why she's arrested. It wouldn't be kidnapping, maybe just trying to sort it all out. But the 13-year-old is not kidnapped. He's just taken with his mom who has legal custody, and she's decided Croatia, end of world, save her son, from turning into a zombie. So interesting.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that reporting, Rebecca. The next story has to do with that new child sex abuse case, civil case filed on Christmas Eve past, and it's against the Mormon Church, and it regards former Bishop John Goodrich's newly alleged victim, who is now an adult man. He was a boy at the time when he's made these allegations in the civil suit filed in California. Says the lawsuit, the church officials knew in 1999 of the alleged child sexual abuse. This is from Floodlit. Floodlit has learned of a newly filed federal lawsuit against the Mormon Church over allegations of CSA, as we just talked about. The lawsuit was filed in the Central District of California. It names the church and its Victorville, California stake as defendants. The plaintiff, the alleged victim here, is an adult male who alleges that in 1999, Goodrich sexually abused him on multiple occasions during church activities and on defendants' premises, including the Desert Knolls Ward and Mojave Narrows Ward in Apple Valley, California. The complaint alleges that in or about 1999, Bishop John Goodrich confessed to leaders within the church that he had engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship with a 16-year-old girl. Despite this confession, defendants failed to report Goodrich to authorities, failed to take reasonable steps to protect other children, and instead turned a blind eye, thereby enabling Goodrich to continue abusing children, including the plaintiff. This is all alleged in the complaint itself. The lawsuit says Goodrich traveled with the victim on visits to California, which is why it's filed in California. Based on our research, Floodlit believes this John Goodrich is the same person currently facing criminal charges in Virginia for child sexual abuse. John Goodrich has never been convicted of a sex crime as of this point in time. His case was featured, and this is a connection I want to touch on. I'll do it kind of briefly, to something that had happened 2 years ago, which you may remember, and we reported on here. Goodrich's case was featured in a 2023 Associated Press report showing that the Mormon Church offered an abuse survivor $300,000 in exchange for promises not to sue the church, to keep the settlement secret, and to destroy audio recordings of meetings with church risk management director Paul Rytting, or Rytting, R-Y-T-T-I-N-G. Goodrich was bishop of the Mountain Home First Ward in the Mountain Home, Idaho stake from 1999 to approximately 2005. So I guess if he confessed to something happening in 1999, he must have waited a while. Or they just allowed him to continue being the bishop. Official church directories from 2002 to 2005 do not list any other bishops named John Goodrich. He seems to be the only one. As of January 2026, this month, Goodrich's Virginia criminal case is proceeding through pretrial motions. His Idaho dentistry license remains active. 2 prior criminal cases in Idaho ended without convictions. One ended when charges were dropped because a Mormon bishop was unable to testify because of the privilege. And the other resulted in a withheld judgment despite Goodrich's guilty plea. So here he is, John Earl Goodrich, born 1959, former Mormon bishop and dentist in Idaho. And then it repeats some of the information we've already gone over. This is his daughter. This is Chelsea Goodrich, whom you may remember. On December 3rd, 2023, this is 2 years ago, Associated Press reporters Mike Resendez and Jason Deeren published 2 stories related to this case. Key points. I'm going to go over these quickly, not because they're not important, but because they are old news, but the connection here is really significant, I think. The accused in this case, Goodrich, was a former LDS bishop who allegedly sexually abused his daughter, Chelsea Goodrich, when she was a girl. When the victim was 31 years old in March 2017, she told Paul Rytting, the Mormon Church's risk management division director since about 2002, about her father's abuse. So it's 2017. She's now 31. She tells this risk management guy, Paul Rytting, about her father's abuse of her. Here is the AP story with that picture in it. Mormon Church protects itself from child sex abuse claims. This is 2 years ago. Chelsea Goodrich poses for a portrait at a friend's house in Ketchum, Idaho on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. Goodrich's father, a popular Idaho dentist and former bishop in the LDS Church, was excommunicated after sharing details about his relationship with her when she was a child. So I'm wondering if she's a 16-year-old girl. During a religious confession, recordings obtained by the Associated Press show that instead of helping prosecutors, the church used a legal playbook that has helped protect itself from sex abuse claims. Goodrich's father is today a free man as of 2023. I think he still is. And she says she decided to speak out to protect other children. Are you remembering this one? The victim's father had confessed to his bishop, who had called the abuse hotline, and the abuser had been excommunicated. Now, if the victim's father was a bishop at the time, I think he would have been confessing to his stake president, but I don't know. The victim and her mother had then reported the abuse to Mountain Home, Idaho police, along with recordings of conversations with the allegedly abusive father, in which he admitted to getting into bed with the victim while he was sexually aroused, but he insisted in the recording that there was no direct sexual contact. You may remember those recordings too. Mountain Home police arrested him and charged him with a variety of sex crimes. Ridding flew to Haley, Idaho from Salt Lake City to meet with the victim and her mother. They asked him if the LDS Church would allow the bishop to testify at the abuser's trial because, of course, he had confessed to him. I'm guessing he's not a bishop at the time he's confessing. Over a 4-month period, Ridding, this guy over here, conversed multiple times with the victim, her mother, and her advocate, who was a male LDS member. Ridding told them that under Idaho state law, the clergy penitent privilege prevented the bishop from testifying without the accused's consent. The AP has recordings of these conversations, which it received from the victim's advocate, and we've played those too in prior podcasts. Both of them are also available to listen to at the Floodlit website if you want to listen to those. During these recorded calls, Ridding said he could find out whether the alleged abuser had previously repented for his relationship with Chelsea by checking helpline records, which was really weird because this would seem to be a direct contradiction to his sworn testimony in another child sex abuse case against the LDS Church, in which he said that they don't keep any records at the helpline, and they're destroyed at the end of every day, which you'd think would make it hard to go back and check them for anything. Prosecutors dropped the case because the bishop didn't testify. Ridding then offered the victim and her mother $300,000 on behalf of the church as an agent to not use the victim's story as the basis for a civil suit against the LDS Church and to keep the existence of the NDA secret. Chelsea and Lorraine signed the agreement. I guess Ridding didn't think to have the other guy in the room sign it. Remember the one who's being the victim advocate? The LDS Church told the Associated Press, quote, the confidentiality agreement with Chelsea and Lorraine did not preclude Chelsea from telling her story, and the abuse of a child or any other individual is inexcusable. As of December 3rd, 2023, Goodrich was a free man and a practicing dentist with access to children. Remember, this is from that earlier story. According to the Mormon Church, all information about child sexual abuse passed from church members to their bishops is confidential under the clergy penitent privilege, and all information passed from the helpline to church attorneys is confidential under the attorney-client privilege. It's a heck of a coincidence how it works out that way. Everything is privileged at every step of the way. Meanwhile, Ridding and other church officials have said in sworn testimony that the helpline either keeps no records or destroys all records at the end of each day. How many times have we heard that? May not be true. And that is the end of that story. Any thoughts from you, Rebecca, and then Belle?
Well, it wouldn't be the newscast if there wasn't some kind of CSA story having to do with the LDS Church and somebody in leadership. Yeah, this is so.
I think Bill predicted this.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Yeah, I think we are on, if I'm not mistaken, we had 3 the first week, 1 the second week, and 1 here. So I think we're up to 5 now. and we're not even out of January yet. And
so everybody knows that we did predictions. I don't know, I did, but we did a few. And this was Bill's prediction that there would be more child sex abuse cases against the church in 2026.
Yeah, and I think what we'll find is there's going to be a lot more cases that come forward and are talked about in the news over the course of this year. It is something that is prevalent inside the LDS church for the reasons that I think are easy to figure out. It just isn't the gold standard, and it may not be a very good standard at all.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This next story, if I can add this to the stage. Is that okay, Bill?
Yeah, let's do that.
Is this it?
No, it's going to be right. Let's do this one here.
Okay.
Okay, so tonight we're looking again at the word Mormon. Once again, it's not just a nostalgic relic like Russell Nelson wanted it to be, but it is back in the cultural background. So we covered this story that's shown on the right there from the Salt Lake Tribune. Nearly 8 years after President Russell M. Nelson told members, media, and the world to stop using the term, by the way, I noticed you used Mormon several times in your article, RFM, when it spelled out Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I was chuckling and giggling in the background as you did so.
I figure it's okay now.
Yeah, it has to be, because they're fighting for it. So nearly 8 years after President Russell M. Nelson told members, media, and the world to stop using the term in favor of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the nickname stubbornly persists as the lingua franca around the faith. That persistence isn't just casual habit. It's the evidence of how deeply the term has been woven into both member identity and broader public discussion. Part of the story has been the church's ongoing effort to police its image, not just through style guides, but through legal pressure, those style guides for sure. Last December, attorneys representing the church contacted several critical podcasts, including us over here at Mormon Discussion and Mormon Stories as well, urging them to abandon trademark efforts or strip Mormon from their branding. For critics and former members, this move felt like an attempt to control not just language, but narrative space. But when we dig into the data, and this is the newest article here on the right, what search data reveals about the move to wipe out the forbidden M word? Ooh, Mormon. The Salt Lake Tribune did this article. This was on January 25th, so just yesterday. But when we dig into the data on how people actually talk about the faith online, we see different kinds of disconnect. Researcher Jana Reese looked at decades of Google Trends data to test whether Nelson's push shifted search behavior. In other words, if President Nelson emphasizes to the saints, to the general public, this word is off limits, then we should be able to go into the data and see that at least on some level, the world and church members perhaps have pulled back from its use. And interestingly, that's not exactly what we find. So the result was striking. Searches for Mormons still far outnumber those for Latter-day Saint by more than 2 to 1. And spikes in interest often track pop culture touch points rather than institutional branding campaigns. That tells us something. Constraints from the top are not automatically translating into the vocabulary and usage changes the church seems to want in broader world and among critics. In other words, nobody really listened. And yes, you get the members who from time to time say, ooh, we don't use that word. Naughty, naughty you, and then slap your hand. The reality is that when people are talking about the church outside of church itself, they're still using the word Mormon. There's a cultural logic to that. Mormon isn't just a label. It's tied to the Book of Mormon, tied to the Pioneer Era, and the I Am a Mormon campaign, which strangely enough is a campaign that originated with the church itself in the 2010s and decades, of course, of political and media exposure.
Yeah, God was just speaking as a man then.
Yeah, well, that prophet's dead, so he's not worth much more than a collector comic book or a vintage car. And in one word, that word Mormon conveys the religious systems that stem from Joseph Smith and the larger culture of those connected to them. In other words, it's just easy to say Mormon. And for people to know what you mean, and for you to speak about whether it's the LDS church or other religions that stem out from Joseph Smith, or to just speak about this culture at large. And so that happens. For many former and current members, that word carries stories, identity, and community. And for outside observers, including journalists, scholars, casual searchers, it's simply the easiest shorthand. Efforts to replace a nearly 2-century-old term with a 9-word title are unprecedented in religious branding. Never before have we been asked to go from a 1-word synopsis of a thing to a 9-word lengthy naming of it.
I know, it's not a name, it's a paragraph.
Yeah, and language habits don't bend easily to edicts. So, lastly, the tension we're seeing now is between institutional desire and lived linguistic reality is more than a branding quarrel. It touches on authority, belonging, history, and the power of narrative. In the end, what people call themselves and what they call others matters because language shapes perception. Mormon may be forbidden in official statements, but for now, it is still very much alive in searches, speech, and the cultural imagination. This hits home because John Dehlin is dealing with the LDS Church. I don't think he's had his mediation yet with them. I think that's coming. We are still in a process with the LDS Church. I'll leave it at that, by the way. I don't want to say any more than that, but we'll leave it. We're in the middle of a process with them. I know that Mormon News Roundup is dealing with some things over there with them. It seems like the church, on one hand, wanted to get rid of the use of the word Mormon so that people wouldn't connect the dots on looking for things Mormon and finding all the criticisms and tie that to the LDS Church. But on the other hand, this church still wants that word. And me wonders why they want to have it both ways. Any thoughts from you guys?
I think that they never saw the pop culture tidal wave of things to do with all things LDS and Mormon that was going to happen in the last 4 years. And I'm talking about, negative news like Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell. How do you do a story on them without saying, Mormon or Lori Vallow, or Jody Hildebrandt, Ruby Frankie? How do you not say Mormon? How do you not say Mormon when you're talking about the secret lives of Mormon wives? It's just everywhere. Mormon is back. And I always made it a point of whenever anything big would happen having to do with Mormonism in the news, I would check out all the headlines from different newspapers. Mormon prophet dies. Oh, yes, they did that kind of stuff. You could see that. I would always kind of collect them. So they may say Church of Jesus Christ in their paragraph, but then they'll go forward and say, Mormon, or the headline will be Mormon, because that is how you instantly connect with your viewer, your reader. We're talking about Mormons. Everybody knows what that is. There's no way around that. So I think it's coming back. I think it's coming back big time. And I don't even think it really went away, except for maybe, I don't know if you guys have relatives like I do, or friends who say, it's not that, it's the Church of Jesus Christ. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times somebody has said that to me, but I don't know if, in the wider world, they do that.
Somebody said brevity is the soul of wit, but I'm surprised and shocked even to have in my hands here something that is actually worth more than everything that Russell M. Nelson ever said. And the weird thing is that I'm not making that up. This is what we learned in General Conference. We learned in General Conference that this comic book is worth more than President Nelson ever said. It has more value. This is a number 100 of the Avengers, by the way. I looked it up. It might be worth something. But anyway, that's all I had to say about that. So going now to the next story, which is, I think it's me again. Oh, yeah, it's about these. Okay, we'll fight over this one. Michigan church gunman called 911 with bomb threats to local churches minutes before the attack. 4 people killed, 8 others injured in that September attack by Sasha Pezenik, January 19th, 2026. Gunman Thomas Jacob Sanford made his own call to emergency dispatchers minutes before he drove to a Michigan church in September, rammed his truck into the chapel, opened fire, and set the building ablaze, according to newly released records. The documents, released first to ABC News by Grand Blanc Township Police, offer new details about the moments leading up to the shooting and reveal harrowing eyewitness accounts of the chaotic scene inside. Less than 4 minutes before calls began coming into 911 about an attack at the LDS church in Grand Blanc, Michigan, Sanford himself phoned in a bomb threat about area churches, other churches, different churches, according to the records. This 911 bomb threat call came in at 10:21:50 and was identified from past calls as belonging to Thomas Jacob Sanford. Yes, identified from past calls as belonging to Thomas Jacob Sanford, according to one of the police reports. The report noted that the GPS location of where the 911 bomb threat call originated from was less than a mile from the church that Sanford would soon attack. And there we have some of the audio, pretty much all of the audio, which was released. And sorry about surprising you with that, Bill. I didn't tell you before we started that I had this ready to go. But it's about, I'm sorry, what?
I told him.
You told him. Okay,
I'm such a busybody. I looked at your slides. I'm like, oh, he's got video. I better let Bill know.
Thank you so much. You are a gem. So if we play this, Bill, it's about a minute long. It's not the whole news story from this channel.
Hold on. No. Listen to me. Listen. I'm going to talk. No, you're going to listen. I'm going to hang out the phone.
New audio obtained by Local 4 reveals Thomas Sanford made his own 911 call just minutes before driving a truck into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township last September.
Genesee County 911. Hey, I want to report it was a bomb in the Mormon Temple in Birmingham. And there's also a bomb in the River Church at Atlas.
The call lasted less than 2 minutes. During it, Sanford rambles off bomb threats at 3 places of worship, including a Catholic church in Grand Blanc, a church in Goodrich, and a Mormon temple in Birmingham. But never once did he mention the church he eventually attacked.
The Mormon Temple in Birmingham. Birmingham Mormon Temple is very important, okay? That's very important, that one there, okay?
Birmingham,
the Mormon Temple. The Mormon Temple.
Where's Birmingham?
Birmingham, Michigan.
When the dispatcher asked for his name, Sanford hung up.
The river.
So there is that story, that additional information about this gunman trying to get police to go somewhere else while he attacked the church. Your thoughts, Bill, and then Rebecca.
Yeah, it's not said by the news. We've all said it. It's obvious that this call was meant to distract law enforcement, send them in various places, keep them at a distance from the church that he drove into. And I'll just note, it's considering all of that, it's at least I think of note that law enforcement still got there relatively quickly to handle that situation. And so if his attempt had worked the way he wanted it to, one can only imagine how that might have turned out.
Rebecca.
I think it's interesting that he didn't know the temple would be closed on Sunday, right? There wouldn't be anybody there, or maybe he did. And how the dispatcher was kind of like, the where, the what? And he's like, it's a very important building. So at least he was, sort of singing the praises of the temple. But I have a question for you, RFM. When I read that, it said, we recognized his voice from previous calls. Yeah. Does this mean he was a person that called in threats? Isn't there a point where somebody would go and visit him and do a visit and go, he sounds a little unstable?
It could certainly be complaints, and I expect that he was known. I think we even had clips of people who were neighbors who knew of him as kind of that guy who's a little bit weird. And a little bit means a lot. But yeah, he was calling in, but it doesn't mean he was calling in about threats or anything. He could have been calling in about complaints, or apparently he called in enough to have a recognizable voice, whatever those calls were. Okay, and the police may have gotten there as quickly as they did because he only made these phone calls a few minutes before he rammed the church. I mean, he didn't give him a chance to go anywhere, just to get out of the building. And so I have no idea, but anyway, that's the story on that.
Oh, here we go. Temple news. We have a segue, right, Bill? We can segue from Birmingham Temple bomb threat to LDS temples. So there is a lot of temple news, and I've kind of been holding on to it because we've had a lot of other stories. So I'm going to go through this quickly, but there are several temples I just want to update you guys on. The first one we're going to talk about is Flagstaff, Arizona, an absolutely gorgeous area. That temple was first announced just not even a year ago. This is kind of incredible to me. They have already told everybody where the site is. They have not released a rendering of the building, but they have told everybody where it is going to be built. So that's very quick, because some of these other ones, it's years before they ever get around to the sites. So I'm not sure what that means. We'll have to watch that. But this was interesting because as soon as it was announced on April 6, 2025, and I talked about this on the newscast, on Reddit popped up, this petition. We want to make sure the temple complies. We want to make sure it follows our codes and zoning. I've heard of someone named Rebecca Biblioteca. I mean, I was kind of proud, right? I kind of felt like, look, they know where they can go to get information. They can Google things, and they probably have. But this petition, the graphic right there in the middle, that popped up a day after the temple was announced in April of 2025. So Flagstaff was already on it. Then everything was quiet because, as we all know, you announce a temple, and unless you're LDS, you don't know anything about it. You have no idea anything's even coming at all. Even the town probably doesn't know, except for maybe some people who do know. But until they show up, with their proposals and, their locations and all of that, no one's going to know anything about it. So that's what's happened. They've now announced this location. I don't know if any of you are from Flagstaff, so I'm probably not going to say where it is, but you can look at that map. Maybe you know it well. I'm not sure. But so instantly another petition is up again. And this one, this is more immediate. They're really, things are moving ahead is what I'm trying to say. So let's see if I can do this on my, oops, hold on. Sorry, I read my notes off my slides and sometimes they kind of mess up. Hold on one second. I know I used to print things out that was really large, and then I'm like, I'm done with that. I'm wasting paper. So, okay. So here we go. The issue, it says on the petition, this petition is a personal urgency for preserving Flagstaff's cherished status as the world's first international dark sky city, a distinction it earned on October 24th, 2001, for effectively balancing concerns for night sky, preservation, public safety, and economic security. We fear a potential Mormon temple with its extensive lighting needs might jeopardize this. And it kind of goes on, to talk about just how it's a landmark and some things like this. So they say it's a call for the protection and preservation. Then they do say stop the construction of the Mormon temple. I do not agree with that at all, because you're not going to stop it. None of these cities have, and none of them tried to. You're simply trying to make it fit in, with the codes, the zoning, and the surrounding area. So I think maybe they should reword that right there. But there is a petition. You could probably Google it if you wanted to sign it. So what's interesting about this is that there is a major observatory. Have you guys heard of this observatory? There's an incredible observatory there. The Lowell Observatory. It's a historic astronomical research institution founded in 1894, and it is famous for discovering Pluto. I know, don't get me started. To me, Pluto will always be a planet. I refuse to acknowledge that it's been deregulated. But this is one of the reasons that this town received their dark sky status, and it's the first city to have that. So, I mean, you have to be so sensitive to light. If there's an observatory, and there's actually 2 observatories there in the area. So I just think, and here's another little blurb about it being the world's first international dark sky city. I mean, do you think the church knew that when they announced the temple there? I mean, it takes a lot of what to go and try to build something that's going to be jacked to Jesus with light in this kind of a dark sky city with such a prestigious observatory. And also 2025
Is it okay
last
to
year.
reflect? Is it okay to reflect for just a second on the question of why it is that the Mormon
Yes.
Church has to light all their temples up so bright that they can be seen from outer space? I mean, what is up with that?
Yep, it's a beacon. It's wanting to be seen. It's so you see nothing else. That's the only reason.
See only me.
See only me. That's right. And in fact, in 2025, they got the Dark Sky Place of the Year award. I mean, yeah, I know, but that doesn't matter at all, because that was the same year that the LDS Church said, oh, we'll see about that. Now, I think Flagstaff is not like Heber. In Heber, they were also a dark sky city. They had been for 20 years, and the county commission overturned it overnight. No more dark sky. Go ahead and build whatever you want. I think Flagstaff is going to be different. I hope and I think that their codes and zonings and lighting ordinances are already strictly in place. This is what I'm hoping. And it says the city code compliance section is tasked with implementing dark sky regulations around the city. The team regularly reviews outdoor lighting permit applications, conducts inspections, investigates complaints, and enforces compliance when necessary. I feel like this is going to be a really interesting, little thing here where they kind of go head to head. The church is going to go head to head with this city that is hell bent on saving and protecting its dark skies. We will see if its codes and zoning and ordinances are up to it, and if our LUPA is going to be something that can supersede all that. I certainly hope not.
You know what I would do if I were doing the
do?
design for this temple, if I were in charge? I would make it like the Lowell Observatory. That's the model I would use for it.
Yeah, well, look at this. Tucson is a similar scenario, and their codes were so strict that the church had no choice. They built this gorgeous, I think this is beautiful, blue dome that fits in with the landscape. And look how it's lit at night. It looks like a Walmart. I mean, the lighting is very low scale. The tower, the dome is not really lit up. There's no reason they can't do this in Flagstaff or any of these other places. I approve of this temple if it matters, but we'll see. It's an interesting scenario because they're already up in arms and they know what they have to protect. So we'll see what happens going forward. Any quick thoughts on that before I move to the next one?
That dome is actually attractive. I'm surprised to see it on a temple.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That blue color. It was something that they insisted that they have. So yeah, if you want to see how a city does it, go look up Tucson and everything that happened while they were building the temple there. Very interesting.
Any thoughts by you, Bill?
Yeah, I think it is so much easier of an Arlupa argument for the church to go, Jesus Christ is the light of the world. And it's our faith that we've always been teaching this, that are the light of Christ emanates through the world. The church wants to light up the skies like no one's ever lit up the skies before. I think if they can beat Arlupa with a tall steeple, then they could kick Arlupa's rear end with lights as big as they want them.
Wow.
I think there may be method in the madness. Perhaps why Jesus has delayed a second coming so long isn't intentional. It's because he can't find Earth again to get here. So he's sort of lost in space. Apologies to Irwin Allen.
Looking around.
We're sending out the beams so that he can triangulate and show up.
That's a possibility. It's interesting to note in Utah, there really are no codes or ordinances that say don't light it up, jack it to Jesus. The temples here are so bright, so incredibly bright. I mean, it's horrifying actually how bright they are. And don't even get me started on wildlife and birds. I feel very strongly about this, even before I became a temple buster. I really do.
I believe it. In fact, I looked at something called what is it called in Flagstaff? Dark Sky City, whatever it's called.
It's the
Dark Skies
official Dark Sky City. Yep.
That sounds great. That sounds so cool.
Yep.
So I would like to go visit so I could see the skies, the stars.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah,
exactly. You can't see them here in Utah. There's too much light pollution. Anyway, the next temple that we're going to talk about is Colorado Springs, right? This was announced in October of 2023. Things have been moving along nicely. They are up to their final vote of the city council on the 10th of February. All right. Now, I've been kind of following it. I haven't seen much from any kind of resident group that's trying to do anything, although I know that one exists. And it's interesting because they had a city council meeting back on December 10th. And I decided this morning while I was on my commuter train, I better go review that and let's see exactly what happened. I started listening to it and nobody stood up to speak for any residents that might have an issue with the temple. Okay, that's great. Maybe they don't. But everybody stood up to talk for the temple. And I was actually having just kind of a reaction to it. It's where heaven and earth meet. It draws our eyes upward. It's an integral part of our religion. All those phrases that we've heard for the last 3 years in Lone Peak or Lone Mountain, in Fairview, they're still using them. They were using them at the city council meeting. I had to turn it off. I just almost didn't have the stomach for it anymore to hear that. So I know it's terrible. The article about Colorado Springs says the proposal has sparked controversy among the residents, with some expressing support and others voicing opposition. One community member said it's not too overbearing. It's not too big. It's just right. Another, it sounds like the Three Bears.
That wasn't a Mormon at all, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. Another one said the idea that there's a huge building with lights on isn't very attractive to the community. And it's almost like we have heard this, we have deja vu. We have read these articles over and over. Every community has the same reaction. They say the same thing. Now, there is a lawsuit. Mike Kuhn, an attorney representing neighbors appealing the project, emphasized that the primary concerns are related to the, I bet you guys can say this with your eyes closed, the illumination and the height of the spire, right? And he also wants to make clear that, I bet you could recite this with your eyes closed, we have no objection to the temple being there. We think it's a great idea. Our primary objection concerns the height of the spire. It is the same thing everywhere. Why are they doing this? Why can't they build something like Tucson or Anchorage where there is no issue like this? So this is the meeting that I listened to on December 10th. The city's 11-member planning commission voted 7-1 to deny the appeal. And this is the resident's lawyer who's saying, hey, let's hold off on that. They said, no, we're going ahead. But they did say, we're going to revisit the height and the light because it exceeds the city code's limits. And this is what they're going to be talking about on February 10th. So it's the same old story. Here's where, to me, it got rather interesting. In the article, Wayne Williams, a former Colorado City Council member who helped write the city's code regarding such constructions, believes that the project should have been approved months ago. He stated, when we adopted these provisions to allow spires to be higher, we had no intention for the screening of spires. That would be nonsensical. Williams argues that the spire serves a spiritual purpose and should be exempt from such requirements.
He's no Mormon.
Yes, he has a very unique perspective for somebody who graduated from BYU, because I looked it up. Yeah, exactly. So
I knew it.
I'm not saying anything, but I was looking at that first line, helped write the city code, making provisions to allow spires to be higher. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. And I'm not going to say anymore, but I thought that just kind of was a little bell that went off in my head right there. So yeah, interesting. All right. They go on to say the church has made concessions in the design, including a matte finish to reduce the reflectivity and modifications to the spire's needle. So they said, okay, we won't paint it with that glow up paint that we paint all the other temples with at the very tip top. We'll make that a matte finish, and then, it won't be as bright. So, they're trying to work with the city. They're saying this is the same old stuff. Okay, so here's a sign for the meeting. It's going to be on the 10th. And then I started to find things on social media. Hi, everybody. Make sure that everybody, has positive engagement. Post on social media. They're letting people know what's going on. This was interesting. It says, if you are able to attend or are willing to be an alternate to attend the city council appeal meeting regarding the Colorado Springs Temple, spire height and exterior lights, right? They're letting them know what the issue is. They give them the date and time. Please let me know. This is the Relief Society. This went out on some kind of app that goes out to everybody in every stake. We have been asked to provide at least 3 people per ward. So I checked with some people that know there's 10 stakes, maybe 50 wards, 3 people. You do that math. And we have already 2 brothers already in this particular ward. So, of course, this is AI. I made this up. Remember how they wear the same color shirts? I'm waiting for that announcement next. Maybe they'll all show up. But again, this shows you how they mobilize. It shows you how they've told everybody that each ward has to provide 3 people. Then, of course, there's this long letter. I'm not even going to read it because you guys have all seen this letter before. Fast and pray that hearts will be softened, right? Fast and pray for the temple. Here's the email address of the city. Please email this email address, and we will print off the letters and hand them in a big stack to the city very dramatically. Please attend the meeting or Zoom in, log in here so we can tell the city there are 5,000 LDS people watching. We know this, right? We know
it'll be very dramatic with the big stack. It'll be like the final scene of Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, it will. And they did this in Heber. Was it Heber? No, it was Lone Mountain. They go, here's the stack from people opposing the temple. Here's the stack from people who are, and it's exactly that. They have given them the email address. They have given them the login information, and they've told them exactly what to do to fast and pray, how to approach people on social media, be kind, be Christ-like, all of it. And it's signed by
fasting and praying for the church lawyers.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody ever fasts and prays for the lawyers. That's who you should be fasting and praying for.
you know what, RFM, I will fast and pray for you because you are a lawyer. As my co-host Landon calls it, wishing without food. I love that. Please wish without food that the hearts would be softened. I love it. So let me see if I can turn this. Yeah. So anyway, interesting development, and we'll see. Well, I thought, okay, do we want to live stream that meeting? I'm not sure. We'll see what happens, but just know that this continues.
What's supposed to happen at this meeting?
Okay, so this meeting is they are going to talk about the modifications that need to be made, the height and the light, and then they're probably going to pass it. You know, if the church says yes, we'll paint that. This is a 140-foot steeple, so this is on the taller side. So we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah,
Sounds just right to me.
Yeah, just right. Exactly. We'll see. And of course, it's next to an upscale housing development. You guys know all this. This is exactly how it works. So, but I thought it was just interesting about the person that was on the city council, you know, and, you know, I don't know. I thought that was an interesting development. So that led me over to Bakersfield. Do you guys remember Bakersfield? That was one of the
Tim Rathbone lives.
Exactly. And that was one of the original 5 temples that I was reporting on from the very beginning. But I didn't talk to the residents group there very much. They were pretty much doing their own thing and doing a really good job of it. So one interesting fact when we talk about people that, you know, perhaps are on the inside, right? The church likes to use people that are on the inside sometimes, you know, just to make sure that they're represented in the city process. So in Bakersfield, we've talked about this before, there is a city manager and his name is Christian Clegg. And the city manager is responsible for day-to-day operations of the city, development of the budget, yada, 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 right? So I think it's interesting there that, let me see, the temple was, what does it say down there? When was it announced? It was announced in 2023.
He was selected in 2020.
Exactly. It was announced in 2023, and the rendering was released in January of 2024. Usually it's the rendering that gets everybody, we got to, you know, because they'll say, oh my gosh, this is huge, right? The rendering is where people start to take action. So January of 2024, the rendering's released. The residents form a citizens group. There's some back and forth, you know, with the town. And at that very same time, the church formed a stake there called the Bakersfield West Stake. It's not listed really in any lists. The new stake president was called on September 8th there, and there wasn't really any kind of announcement made about him like other stake presidents. You'll typically see it in the church news, you know, new stake president and wife, this and that. There wasn't anything anywhere, but it was Christian Clegg, the city manager, who is now the stake president of the Bakersfield
he's a
West
freaking
Stake.
Mormon insider.
It is very unusual. I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about that. It's unusual, I think.
Cities should not hire any Mormons, period.
Well, I mean, he's been the city manager since 2020, but it is in the middle of a residents group having already formed, you know, that they call him to be the stake president. And think about all the other graphics I just showed you. The stake president signs those letters to fast and pray that the town's hearts will be softened. So how does that work? One hand in one hand? I'm not sure. I don't know the details, but I wanted to just look a little bit further about this. I thought it was unusual that he was never listed in any statement about who was the new stake president. And the stake is really kind of hard to find, but this kind of explains how it was put together. Now, I did learn that he was set apart by those of you that don't know what that means, when somebody is called to a high office, like a stake president, a higher up comes to town, gives you a special blessing that you'll be able to do your job and do it very well. And in this case with Christian President Clegg, the highest office in the church he had ever held was an executive secretary. So it's kind of unusual, I think, that you hadn't been a bishop or, you know, anybody else, but, you know, whatever. So I wanted to find out, I was kind of digging in. I learned that James R. Rasband had come to set him apart. And I thought, okay, well, is that Elder Rasband's son? Of course it is. But here's the most interesting part.
Elder Rasband in the Apostles, his son is a general authority.
But not just that. His son is the assistant executive director of the temple department. I found that interesting. So he set apart the city manager to be the stake president, and he's the assistant executive director in the temple department.
This guy got called to be the stake president because he was the city manager.
These are the mysteries that keep me up at night. But again, you know, who knows what it means? It could mean inside, outside. I don't know. I'll let you all draw your own conclusions. I don't think I really even need to say anything. Okay, I think I have one more piece of news, and this is Fairview. good old Fairview, who we've been following since the very beginning. If you remember, the plaintiffs, the residents, had one more chance to appeal that weird boundary issue in the voting and the supermajority. They chose not to appeal. So the temple is a done deal. It is going to start construction. And there you can see the fence, and there you can see the sign showing what's coming. But I just wanted to show everybody what I feel we all accomplished, right? Because I think we all did help do this. And I mean those of us that podcast about it.
You mean you, because you're the one. I mean you. You're the one.
I don't mean me, because I feel like I said in my acceptance speech for that award that I got, I'm a focal
you won a
point.
Brody for it. That's how you it is.
Exactly. But I'm a focal point for all of us that podcasted about it, all of you who listened and viewed and sent information or got the word out, because look at this original temple that was proposed. McKinney, Texas LDS temple, 173-foot spire. This is in a residential neighborhood. One of our friends there lived 60 feet from the door of this, right? 43,000 square feet and 65 feet walls. Do you know how tall that is? 65 feet walls. If your house is 100 feet away from it, this is what it was going to be. And through all of our efforts, what it is a 120-foot spire. It's 30,000 square feet, and those walls are only 35 feet. So I know it's disappointing to many, but I consider it very positive, because I've never seen this. I've never seen them change what it was supposed to be. And it's now called the Fairview, Texas Temple. So we'll watch through construction, but just know what it could have been and know what everybody accomplished. And it's going to be great. The LDS people are going to love it. They can do the ordinances. It'll be lit up. The lighting is now going to be off from 11 p.m. to 5 p.m. That's a win. Things like that. So while Colorado Springs says stop the construction, you can't do that. And you shouldn't be able to do that, because LDS people should be able to have a temple, but you can do this. So to me, it's a positive.
Hey, this is all on you, Rebecca.
Oh, God.
Whoa. They get very excited about you.
All right.
So
I think
congratulations, because I know the way you always deflect attention from yourself, but you won 2 Brodies for this, actually. So I want to just say, on behalf of everybody, thank you to you for keeping these guys as honest as they know how to be.
Perfectly said.
All right. Thank you for that. Now we go to the next story. Is this you, Bill?
It is. I just want to say about what Rebecca just covered. You go back to that earlier moment in her slide presentation where somebody's on the city council, they're a Mormon, and they're passing rules for the city to be able to have taller spires, buildings, whatever it is. If you get a Latter-day Saint on your city council, and that Latter-day Saint wants to change city ordinances so that buildings can be taller, you probably have a mole. Anyway.
And it's very extreme for me to say that cities should just not hire Mormons. It's very extreme. Probably wouldn't be upheld on appeal because it's a suspect class. But, how many times do you have to have examples of Mormons in government doing shit for the church because the church tells them to, and against the interests of the people who put them in that position in the first place?
We don't live in this world where you can do this, but if we could take all of these people who serve on city councils just before temples get announced, who happen to be Mormons and who happen to be a really safe person to start lining up things so that the church can build its temple, if we hooked them up to a lie detector and said, when was the first time, when did you have a conversation with the church prior to this date about this temple going in? It would be really interesting to hear those polygraph answers and the results from the tester on whether that person was telling the truth or not.
Well,
And the person you had the
we have Cody, Wyoming as the major. And again, all these things that we're just throwing out there, it's all alleged. We don't know, but we do have solid evidence and example in Cody of what an inside man can do. And we have the Freedom of Information Act, and we have all the emails and texts and everything between, an inside man in Cody and stake leaders. And you can see what can happen there. The Cody Temple is being built and it's unchecked. They got everything they needed because the city was confused at what they were voting for. So there is precedence for it. But in this case, with these two gentlemen that we mentioned, we have no idea. We just kind of threw it out there. We're alleging nothing. It's just an interesting side note to temple building.
And
yes, I'm sure it's all a coincidence.
And
yeah,
remember,
it really could be.
And remember, in Vegas, when you don't have a guy there, maybe you just send about 10 grand to each one of the districts among that city council. And, you know, it's interesting to see what people do when $10,000 is thrown their way. Anyway, there were 2 opinion pieces in the Salt Lake Tribune this week. The first one was on January 18th, and the second one was on January 26th today. So just a note about that. These 2 opinion pieces took on the complicated and loaded question, does religion, particularly when it's structured around male authority, actually harm women? And the first article leans heavily into research showing that structural sexism inside institutions can have real-world consequences. It argues that when women exist inside systems where power, leadership, and authority are restricted by gender, those limitations don't stay theoretical. They show up in stress levels, health outcomes, and long-term well-being. The author, which is Susan Madsen of this article, points to social science data suggesting that while religious participation often brings health and community benefits, so again, she starts off by noting that there are positives, that those benefits don't appear evenly distributed. Women in gender-inclusive congregations tend to experience better physical and psychological outcomes. Women in rigid, male-dominated systems often don't. And in some cases, they may even fare worse than women who don't participate at all. The argument isn't that belief itself is toxic, but that hierarchy matters, and that being told you're valued while being denied authority creates a quiet but persistent form of harm. Well, when these kinds of things get said in the local papers, what happens usually? Well, some Mormon comes along and says, nope, time to put out the apologetic counter argument. And that is exactly what happened here. So Stephen Craney, Shima Bowman, and Lauren Marks all decided to write their piece for the Salt Lake Tribune on January 26th.
Are these 3 authors of one piece or 3 different pieces?
These are 3 authors of one editorial counter argument in the Salt Lake Tribune.
It must be a great counter argument.
Yeah, this one's titled Voices. Before we declare religion harmful to women's health, let's look at the evidence. So the second opinion piece pushes back on that framing. It warns against jumping from, quote, some religious systems cause harm to, quote, religion is harmful to women, unquote. The authors argue that the broader body of research still shows religion correlating with positive outcomes like community support, meaning making, and resilience. That's what she said. She just pointed out that there was also negatives. By the way, not that that's what she said. Joke. You're rolling your eyes, RFM.
Oh, okay.
But that's what the author of the first article said. Like, there are benefits, but they're not evenly distributed. And when we look at women in high demand fundamentalist religions with patriarchal systems, there are certain negative health effects that show up. What does the second article do? These folks go, yeah, but remember those positive benefits. They caution that isolating a narrow set of studies or implicitly targeting specific faith traditions risk overstating the case and missing the full picture. They also draw an important distinction in how the data is interpreted. In the study frequently cited, women in restrictive congregations were not shown to be significantly less healthy than non-participants. Rather, they simply didn't receive the same measurable benefits in more inclusive environments. That difference matters, they say. It's the difference between claiming religion actively harms women and saying it fails to help them in the same way that it helps others.
So now we're quibbling about what we're going to call the difference in the way women are treated in Mormonism for men.
Yep. So at this, This is where the tension lives, because both things can be true at the same time. And that's the argument she was making in the first one. There are positive benefits of religion. There are positive benefits of unhealthy religion. You can get Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientologists. You could get the folks from Jim Jones 3 days before that event happened.
And Hitler loved his dog.
Yeah. You would get many of the folks in high demand religions exclaiming that they have positive benefits that they've gotten from their faith. That doesn't make the negatives that are occurring null and void. And it's perfectly okay to talk out loud about those. So I'll just note here, religious communities can provide belonging, identity, emotional support, while also reinforcing systems that quietly limit women's voices and autonomy. The conversation becomes less about whether religion is good or bad, and more about whether institutions are willing to confront how power, gender, and authority actually function in practice and how they cause negative health effects and outcomes. It's uncomfortable, and it's resistant to clean conclusions, which may be exactly why it's being talked about out loud here. And what I mean by that is that these kinds of conversations take place as editorials, maybe not the right word, but what is the word in the paper where sort of just an average citizen writes in?
A letter to the editor.
A letter to the editor, yeah.
So when someone speaks up in this way and they're saying, hey, FYI, like things are not great here. I just want to note, like, that's what Floodlit to some extent is doing. That's what Spotlight did with the Catholic Church. That's what Sam Young did in regards to children being interviewed about sexual questions. It's what Widow's Might talks about in regards to the finances and other actions by the LDS church hierarchy. There are negative ramifications when you are manipulated and strong-armed in a high-demand fundamentalist religion. And no amount of continually pointing back at the good benefits those religions give takes off the table the negative things that happen. And to deny those is just another form of abuse, to say that those who have been harmed in unhealthy systems haven't really been harmed. That's just ridiculous. And so we can, on one hand, say there are health benefits to being in religion, even unhealthy ones, while also still standing up and saying there are things here that shouldn't be happening and they're hurting people. Anything from you guys?
It is a typical Mormon response to come back and want to focus only on the good and ignore the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not everyone has that experience of having a health scenario or a health problem at church. But I feel like I was one of those because I had huge just anxiety over being asked to do something, to say a prayer or suddenly have to fill in and teach a class. Or I know it's hard to believe, but I was really shy as a Mormon. I had like, Mormonism is so performative, right? And I was so uncomfortable with it because I was not a believer, that every Sunday I had just huge anxiety that something would happen. You know, I'd be asked to pray. I'd be asked to talk. There was one Sunday where the bishop had announced the week before, we are just going to call people out of the audience to give a talk in sacrament meeting. So everybody prepare. Age 8 to 110, anybody can be called up. I was so stressed out all week, like physical, like hives. And I finally said, I'm not going. I can't go. And then I heard after the fact that about a third of the board didn't show up. Of course they didn't. Nobody wants to do that, right? And you just have that panic and that stress. The thing that also used to stress me out was any kind of call from the bishop, you know, because you didn't know what it was and you had to wait a week. And other people would probably say that's ridiculous. How would that cause a health problem? But for me, it did. It was extreme anxiety that I had to live under. And once I started stepping away and just having these really peaceful Sundays, I've talked about that, how I invented a new religion, Takini, where you sit outside in your swimsuit and you drink tea. Oh my gosh. No, I'm not kidding. I didn't realize how tightly wound I was every Sunday. I mean, I have a good friend who has to take a Valium every time she goes to church. She has a stake calling. It should not be that way. But again, it's not for everybody. So these people that wrote this counterpoint, maybe they can't imagine it, right? Maybe they can't imagine the stress or the pressure or performance anxiety. But for a lot of people, you can. And then you add on top of that the idea that you have no real power, right? You can do everything that you want in your calling. You can organize everything. You can put it together. But you know that you are not the final say. And that's stressful because there's always the unknown there. So I think it's situational, but I know it exists because it happened to me.
Great point. So is this is you, isn't it, Rebecca?
This
As well,
is
this story?
me. Yes, I had a lot of little stories peppered in among here, but I'm calling this polygamy revisionists because I don't know what to call them. A lot of us say polygamy denier,
deniers.
but that's offensive. I hear
It's in the
monogamy
dictionary.
affirmers is maybe
Polygamy
offensive.
deniers.
I've heard polygamy revisionists, meaning that you have made something up about polygamy. Oh, that's super offensive. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, so I'm calling it the polygamy revisionist witch hunt. And we all remember
Well, at least
Michelle.
witches isn't offensive.
That's right. Michelle Stone, a year ago, we reported widely on this, was called into the stake president and told to take all of her content down. And she did. It was pretty amazing. She's still a voice. She's still part of her, organization or magazine, but she took her content down, and it was a lot of stuff. And then just recently we also podcasted about this. We have Catherine Hyatt or is it Karen? It's Karen Hyatt. Sorry. And she was actually excommunicated. She's Michelle's producer, and she wouldn't stop talking about it or wouldn't take anything down. And she was excommunicated and, talked about her. So that's very interesting. There's a new set of people who've been disciplined, and I had talked about them before. David Sharp, their channel is The Standard of Truth Restored. He had been asked, I think it was probably about 9 months ago, around the Michelle Stone time, take your channel down. And he did this poignant little, YouTube where he said, I'm taking it down. So he kind of did what he was asked. He took down his social media presence. He stopped making videos. But apparently they were still keeping an eye on him and his wife, Lynn, and they were brought into a court situation. And when the bishop asked him, well, I know you've taken your stuff down, but will you promise, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, not to bring this up in conversation or mention this, or if somebody talks to you about it, talk about it. He said, I can't say that.
Really? So he's saying you just can't even talk about it privately with people.
Yes, you
Is
can't
that the
even.
story we're getting now from David and Jamie Lynn?
That is kind of what I have gathered from their video. I have a picture of their video there. You guys can look that up. That, just simply talking about it or bringing it up is not appropriate because, you're swaying other people. Now, his wife was only disfellowshipped. He was excommunicated, although they made it very clear in their video that they are of one heart and mind on this. In fact, she said she's even more has strong feels about it, but she thinks maybe because she's a woman, she appeared to be a little softer. But the Lord told the stake president only disfellowship her. And she actually went back in and said, no, you have to excommunicate me. We are together on this. And he said, nope, the Lord has answered that you are only to be disfellowshipped.
If she had hauled off and kicked him right in the nuts, I think he would have excommunicated her.
Maybe, but she also said that she was speaking at the polygamy conference that, that is coming up, I think, in March, and she's on a panel, and he still didn't. So they're confused about that, but they assure everybody they're still united, although one was excommunicated and one was disfellowship. Now, Steve Pinecker, he interviewed them, of course, because he reaches like tentacles everywhere in the restoration, right? And the reason I put this up, it's a nice little blurb here. You guys can check out this episode. It says, David believes he was excommunicated because of his personal belief that Joseph Smith did not initiate or practice polygamy. Lynn was disfellowshipped for holding the same viewpoint. But here's the interesting part. It said, the Sharps also discuss how listening to and studying the works of Jacob Hansen, Greg Manson, Hannah Stoddard, some other Karen Hyatt, but isn't that interesting? They are the ones that led them down this path. So I don't know. I don't know what I've seen in Jacob Hansen or Greg Manson's work to start someone on this path, but there it is. This is what they're saying, according to what Steve wrote. I know. Isn't that interesting? So my question to you, and I always ask this is why I watch out for these polygamy deniers and their excommunications, is why is this what the church is doing? Why are they going after these people when we have examples? I mean, Lori Vallow is still not excommunicated as far as we know. Neither is Ruby Franke or Jody Hildebrandt. We did finally find out that Chad Daybell finally was. There are many other people that are, in jail, in trouble with the law, CSA, excommunicated, reinstated right away, Wade Christofferson. Why do you guys think this is where they are dropping that hammer so forcefully?
Because these people are the most dangerous people in the history of the LDS church.
100%.
This is like a replay of the Gnostic heresies and trying to get them rooted out of the church in the first few centuries of Christianity. The problem is that I'm Radio Free Mormon. They know who I am. We're practically on a first name basis. Bill Reel's Bill Reel. You're you. But these people, by these people, I mean these polygamy denying people, unless they're poking their head out of the ground like little gophers to get them chopped off, which is very helpful, they look like everybody else. They look like all the other Mormons.
Yep.
And they are infested with these people, and they're going to the church meetings and they're talking to other people. Hence, they wanted this additional condition. They're talking to other people and they're getting them to buy off on it. So they have to do something to try and extirpate these people out of the church. And I am surprised that, not that they're excommunicated. I'm surprised that so few have been excommunicated so far. I think many more will follow. The thing I'm surprised about is that it has not even been addressed directly or at all in general conference.
Now, if they put some things out, if you remember that we podcasted about some writings and some gospel topic essays where they talk about polygamy, but in the polygamy cartoon, but they have not come out over the pulpit. And I just wonder if at some point there will be a question that's part of the Temple Recommend interview where you must affirm that you believe he practiced polygamy and do not believe that he was monogamous. Wouldn't that be like an upside down world?
Yes, yes. Was it you who spelled Joseph and Joseph Smith, or was that Steve?
That's Steve's. What do you mean?
At the bottom?
Yeah, he wrote all that.
Okay.
Oh, Joseph.
Yes, that's how it's spelled in Hebrew, I think.
Yeah, it's a good episode. It's getting lots of views. Everyone can go check it out. Any thoughts on that, Bill? I'm just always so curious who they decide to go after. And I agree with you, RFM. They are the most dangerous. And I don't think we even have any idea how many of them there are. I don't think we know. I think there's a lot more than you would think.
I've said forever that the polygamy deniers and the critics agree that polygamy, especially Joseph Smith's polygamy, looks gross. It looks unacceptable. It looks unhealthy. It looks predatory. And so they're coming up with a different way out of it. They're trying to come up with their solution to get away from it. But their conversations are happening inside the building.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversations have to be searched for and found on the internet. Like you guys say, they do not want these folks raising awareness to all the other members in the ward that Joseph Smith's polygamy, if it's true, is disgusting, predatory, unhealthy.
Can I add one more adjective? It's disqualifying.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key point. They believe that if Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, it is disqualifying. He cannot be a prophet and have done that. And so, yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was going to say, I'm looking at Landon's comment in the chat over here. You must confirm Joseph lied to get a temple recommend, because by affirming his polygamy and saying, I know that he did, you also know through all of his writings and things that he lied about it. So that sets you up for huge cognitive dissonance. Interesting. We'll keep watching. We'll see who else, it happens to. But I'm telling you, I had my first wind of this at that movie, Who Killed Joseph Smith, Part 2.
Yes.
I talk about this, how, there was a packed theater, over 500 people there, all of them people who do not believe that Joseph practiced polygamy. And this was in Lehi in Utah County 3 years ago. And I'm telling you, that was just one little tiny representation. I believe this is a huge movement, much larger than we recognize.
And Michelle Stone was there.
Yep, that was the first time I ever saw her. And I've talked about how she gave a talk for like 40 minutes and she talked to the audience and said, if you find people in your ward that you think might be interested in hearing more about this or learning some of the scholarship, if it seems natural to have a conversation, go ahead and do it. She said, kind of like, be careful who you talk to, but if it's somebody that looks receptive,
Mm-hmm.
You guys can have a conversation. So that's why I think my co-host Landon goes, oh my God, I think there are missionaries going out about this. It was it was a huge wake-up call, something we were not aware of at all prior to
The
that.
deal is, I mean, it's got such a huge market. It's got such a huge appeal. You're a Mormon, you're a member, and Joseph Smith and polygamy, and you've always hated it. And then maybe you didn't know about it, then you found out about it, and it blew your mind. It's how can this be? And now they come along and say, guess what? He didn't actually do that.
You can keep that romantic origin story, that beautiful origin story. But then the question none of them will ever answer is, why are you still in the Brighamite church?
Because
I've never gotten an answer.
somehow that didn't affect the priesthood and keys transmission.
Joseph told the truth.
Yep.
Yeah.
It really screwed up with the Catholic Church. That caused a great apostasy. But in the Mormon Church, they just keep on ticking. Now, this is something. Oh, this is your story, isn't it, Bill?
No, this one is mine.
Oh, it's yours,
Yep.
but it is about baseball.
It is about baseball. And for some reason, I thought this was after your other story, but it's not. It's just a really little quick one. If we all remember, former BYU baseball player Camden Dahl, this is another unfortunate CSA scenario where he was abusing a relative for about 5 years since she was 7 years old. And he was a BYU pitcher and, of course, was let go and had to go to court. This is a former Brigham Young University baseball player identified as Camden Dahl, who has pleaded guilty in August of 2025 to 2 felony counts of injury to a child as part of a very controversial plea deal. And I think that RFM talked about this back when this happened in an Idaho case. Well, he was just released from the Fremont County Jail earlier than expected in January 21st, 2026. And everybody was, number one, already upset that he would never have to register as a sex offender and that he only got, I think, 180 days. And here he is being released. People are confused and upset. On top of that, it says he had been sentenced to 180 days in jail, in addition to 8 years of probation as part of the plea agreement. The original release date was expected to be on Valentine's Day. Oh, how nice. But he was released ahead of schedule. So I've been kind of following on social media. People are really confused. And I thought we got to bring this to RFM so he can explain this, because people are just incensed, that he doesn't have to register after 5 years. Here he is with a tear down his eye, right? And it said, the plea deal sparked significant public backlash and controversy. In fact, people were going to threaten the judge that did it. Do you remember that? How they had to put out some information about that? The Idaho Judicial Branch previously issued a statement condemning threats directed at the presiding judge and the court officials following the sentencing. So it was a big deal. And now it's kind of heating up again because they let him out early. Can you explain, I know briefly, just why and what happened? People are really confused.
Well, I expect he got credit for good time.
Okay.
I got let out early. That's my
Okay.
expectation. That would be the most obvious answer to it. I don't know exactly what it is you want me to say. There are a number of factors and variables that could play into a situation like this. Defects in the prosecutor's case strengthen the defendant's case. Ultimately, this guy, Camden Dahl, his lawyer did a good job for him. I'm sorry.
All
I
right.
hope that doesn't sound
Yeah.
flip, but I mean, I'm a defense attorney, and I
Yeah.
think I would be very happy with
Yeah.
myself if I had gotten a deal like that for my client. There are obviously extenuating reasons, at least to the prosecutor in the negotiations that were presented to the prosecutor, that convinced the prosecutor to believe that this was a fair and just resolution of the matter. Obviously, there's people out there who are very upset about it. There are many times in all sorts of criminal sentencings, especially like this. But yeah, so I don't mean to say that somebody shouldn't be upset about it. So all I'm saying is that the prosecutor agreed to it, and there's probably good reasons for it.
Yeah, that's
What do
all
you
we
think,
can
Beth?
say. That's sometimes the bad guy doesn't always get everything everybody thinks that he might deserve. That's
Or
it.
maybe he wasn't as bad as you thought.
That's
I don't
true.
know. I'm just saying.
Sound like
I
a
don't know.
defense attorney. That's right.
I'm just saying I don't know.
Right.
Okay,
Well, thank
right.
you for helping us understand at least a little bit of it. So,
Bill.
What do you want to know what I think about?
Yeah.
I'm just keeping the tally. I think, what are we up to? 7 now for
This was last year, though. This is last
yeah.
year.
Oh no,
He
there were
got
like
released
two
this
more.
year.
we could have done today, but I left them out. There are 2 more I'm going to talk to you guys about tomorrow. It's somebody said that we need to have like a floodlight, like a separate little, floodlight channel where we just, can you imagine?
Let me just note that most sex abuse cases that we cover this year that fit my prophecy will have occurred in years past, because it's only in the present year that we're reporting on someone being held accountable, getting out of jail, whatever it is that happened in the case. I'm still going to count it. I'm calling it number 7. You can bicker with me at the end, whether it's 111 or 109. We can fight then about it.
It'll be 109. All right, then let's see what's next. Oh, this is something that happened down in Las Vegas. Bright light city, gonna set my soul on fire. This is apparently from a parent of a missionary. This is from social media. It says, my son was run over on mission and is coming home after 5 months of trying to continue his service. This is from LDS-RM-Brother Imperial. Today is a sad day for my son. Today he returns home. Flight from presumably Las Vegas, since that's where he's serving, to some other place, and from there to the home airport. If you see him, please give him a hug. He's been serving in the... Hang on a second here. There we go. He's been serving in the Las Vegas mission, and after just 5 months, he's returning home after leaving CCM in Mexico. By the way, is that the missionary training center in Mexico?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I believe he was Spanish speaking, and so he went there and then went to Vegas.
Seriously? You got to go to Mexico to learn Spanish now? You can't just learn that in Provo?
It was exciting to be sent to the CCM, although I have heard there are some health problems that are contagious there.
Yeah, CCM's revenge. After leaving CCM in Mexico and arriving in Las Vegas, where he had been for about 2 weeks. So he's in his mission field for 2 weeks. He gets hit by a school bus in October. Miraculously, he managed to get out from under the bus with a concussion, multiple scratches on his hands, back, and knees, and 10 dislocated discs. Geez, that's like all of them practically. He begged to stay on his mission. We all thought he'd be coming home in December, but miraculously, he was able to continue in a wheelchair, I'm guessing. After months of trying with physical therapy, chiropractic, medical appointments, and injections, he, the mission president, and all of his doctors decided that the best thing for him was to come home to heal. He hadn't come home. Oh my gosh. He's got multiple doctors in Las Vegas, but he hasn't come home. So now he's going to come home after getting hit by a bus 2 weeks into his mission. We have high hopes that he will be able to return to serve the wonderful people of Las Vegas. But for now, he will be on a service from home mission, and we'll see how he recovers and what the doctors think. Please, if you see my son, give him a hug. He's disappointed to go home. We're sad for him, but it fills us with joy to know he can rest and get the help he needs to recover. Then it says dash sister. Do you know what that means, Rebecca? Since you're the source for this.
I redacted her name.
Oh, sister somebody.
Yes. Sister mother. Sister mom.
Oh, okay. So it's the mom writing. I see. Thank you.
I was trying to redact everything because, it's a really sad little story, I thought.
So this was put up here. This is also with the story. So here's a picture of the young man with the Book of Mormon, top right, him with his parents, apparently. And down here is a nice little poster, which may have been made by one of his brothers or sisters, that says, even heroes need rest. What do you think about this poster, Rebecca?
I think maybe it was made from people on his mission, possibly. But yeah, it has for those that are listening, it has a picture of a bus, and there's the missionary out in front of the bus, but it looks like he's wearing a cape, right? And he's able to stop the bus. His little hand is stuck out. So,
Yes.
Yeah, I guess
If only.
It's an if only poster. Yeah. I mean, when I first thought, oh my goodness. Yeah. I kind of had a Mary Tyler Moore moment just because it was, like if you were mauled by a dangerous dog, would you send somebody a greeting card with a dangerous dog? I don't know.
You know what this makes me think of, Rebecca?
Tell me.
It reminds me of the clown's motto. A little song,
Yep.
a little
A little
dance,
dance.
a little seltzer down your pants.
Down your pants. Yeah, inappropriate laughter. That's something. But no, the reason that I brought this little post to your attention is because I thought, we do hear about missionaries that pass away, and we've talked about 2 in the last, I think, like 4 weeks. But we don't hear about the missionaries that have accidents, right? And are just quietly sent home. Or in this case, somebody that feels the incredible need to stay on their mission when it seems like, you could
Yes.
exasperate your health problems by, did you read that description of all the medical care?
When
I just think,
dislocated.
yes, just the idea that you feel that, of course you're calling it, you feel God's call or whatever, but that pressure that you have to stay. I just think there's a big problem with that, and I think it's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to missionaries. And we've all talked about it before, healthcare and paying attention to your health and, getting the care you need and limited mental health and mission nurses. It's all part of it. But, bless this little guy, right? He just wanted to stay out there, but he really should have come home right away, honestly, to get some help and some rest. And then he could have gone back out. But there's incredible pressure.
You're right, because even heroes need rest.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, the prophet. The prophet. Which prophet?
Yes. This is a story that I came across just at the very last minute, and I think this is our last story. Do you guys remember back in whenever it was, when a year and a half ago, where the prophet received the Gandhi King Mandela Peace Prize?
He was the first person to ever receive it. He was so honored.
Because I don't think it's ever been given again. It's a pretty amazing award, and what's the acronym for that? The Kahima Prize. And it was all over social media on the LDS side. It isn't really listed, and wasn't listed on the Morehouse College site, which is where this was presented from.
Okay, I'm calling an audible here.
Exactly. And
hey, Bill?
What?
Bill, I think Bill had something to say.
Oh, go ahead.
Did they really give him a poster with a picture of a bus?
Oh, yeah. I know, Bill. I'm telling you. That's why I made RFM do the story, because I could not concentrate.
I think this is what they greeted him with at the airport.
This reminds me of Jesus was crucified on a cross, so now we all wear the death instrument.
No, right. I had that thought exactly too. And that was kind of the LDS argument, right?
God,
we don't celebrate the method of death, but yeah, it's just a little...
If this guy had suffered for our sins, we would be wearing little necklaces with little mini buses.
But see, I think
Jesus got hit by, if Jesus got hit by a school bus and that's how he got killed, who would be driving?
Yeah. I think he's stopping the bus. It's like an alternate reality where
I think that's what he was trying to do at the time he got run over.
And I don't know the details. I tried to look it up to see what happened. I don't think he was on a bike. I think it was a pedestrian accident. But yeah, we'll probably never know. But yeah. I love it. Bill's like, can we go back 2 slides? I want to talk about the bus. That's great. All right. Mandela, you guys remember this, right? And he was super proud. It was in all the church media, but not so much anywhere else. We could never find it. We still can't find it. Here's a picture of him receiving that award. It was a video broadcast, if I remember.
It was video.
Then he got his portrait. Do you remember this?
Nice
on the
frame.
wall.
How come his is the only one that's gold?
Yeah, do you know, that is interesting. I haven't seen the rest of the portraits. He's right next to Abraham Lincoln.
He's on Abraham Lincoln's right hand.
Facilitates peace. And so this is displayed in the chapel there at Morehouse College. So it's very prestigious.
Where are the past winners? I want to see the year before and
there are no past winners. And there are no future winners. It was a one-off.
That's why it's gold.
It was a one-off, from what I can tell. And I know the church did make several large donations to the NAACP.
No.
And also there was a scholarship, I believe, for this, several scholarships, I think.
They didn't really mean it.
Well, again, I'm not going to draw those lines. You guys can draw those lines. But there's big news and more news out of Morehouse College. This is the college that gave President Nelson the award, that put President Nelson's picture up there. I think it's interesting that he has a little cutout, and I think we podcasted about this. If you look at it, I think it's Palm Sunday. I think it's the triumphal entry, isn't it? Right there. He's up there in the picture with Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ in the picture, right next to Lincoln. Yeah, exactly. So, it's a portrait, and this is what we're going to be talking about. So suddenly on LDS social media, again, I haven't really seen too much about it on the website for Morehouse College, but it says we are pleased to share that a commissioned painting, and I don't know who commissioned it, but it is a painting of the prophet Joseph Smith will soon be added to the distinguished portrait collection at the Martin Luther King International Chapel at Morehouse College. This sacred space is also home to President, and there's a lot of capitals here, Russell M. Nelson's portrait, and is where he was honored. They want to remind everybody, again, this is LDS social media, with the Gandhi King Mandela Peace Prize in recent years. The portrait of Joseph Smith will be officially unveiled during a Vespers service on Sunday, February 1st. It's coming right up at the church.
Hey, Rebecca, where can I read about the history of this Gandhi King Mandela Peace Prize?
I have not found it anywhere else.
Full page.
It's like it exists in an ulterior universe, just like this thing that's there. I haven't found anything. So
is that like an alternate universe?
Yeah, exactly. Either one. What did I say? Ulterior? Yeah. That's funny. It's getting to be the end of the show. Okay. I haven't had dinner. If I can't,
and we're over by 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I need to talk faster. Anyway, it's going to be officially unveiled. We warmly invite members of the church to attend to be a part of this meaningful occasion. We hope to see many of you there. This obviously went out to a stake in the area. And here is the actual invitation, the Joseph Smith portrait unveiling. It's going to be hanging in the Martin Luther King Memorial Gallery, along with Abraham Lincoln and President Nelson. And I got really curious. I'm like, this is kind of cool. A commissioned portrait of Joseph Smith. We haven't had one like on this scale for a while. And we have some new information about what Joseph looked like. So I made a prediction. This is what I think it's going to look like. I think that's beautiful. I would hang that in my home. I hope it does look something like that, because I think that, that represents Joseph's life right there. So what do you guys think about my portrait?
It has a gold frame.
And it has a gold frame, just like President Nelson.
I'm waiting until they hang a picture of Brigham Young in the Martin Luther King Memorial.
Yes. Yes, I think that's coming next. I think you're right.
Can you tell me the age of each of these four girls in several months shy terms?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to have the one woman in the front, she looks a little older. Then the one on the left looks younger. I don't know. Maybe it represents everybody.
They look kind of like the Cottingley fairies.
Yeah, they do, don't they? They do. But anyway, we'll see, and we'll let everybody know. I think there's a way that you can stream in maybe and see this unveiling of this portrait. And again, it says commissioned. I do not know if the LDS Church commissioned it and they are going to hang it in the gallery, or if they, of their own accord at Morehouse College, created a portrait of Joseph Smith. That would be interesting if it had nothing to do with the LDS Church and it was their take on Joseph. We'll see.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for that fine reporting, Rebecca. And now we are into just talking about what's coming up. Rebecca, tomorrow night is Tuesday. That means Mormonish. What's going on?
It does mean Mormonish. And I have to say, let me see if I can move this. It suddenly hit me that this is our 300th episode. I mean, that's something.
Wow.
To me.
Congratulations.
I brought it up to my co-host. Thank you. I brought it up to my co-host. I'm like, do you know that we've done 300 episodes? I was like all excited. He goes, oh, kind of saying in his mind, I've been sitting here on my couch for year after year. No, he loves it, but it is pretty funny.
I think half of them have been with Ganesh Cherian.
Half of them have been with Ganesh. It's true. He's fantastic. But this episode is important because we did an episode with him like 3 weeks ago. It was about Isaac Hale. Very interesting. And just off the cuff, Ganesh goes, well, I mean, you know what probably happened that night at the Hill Cumorah. I mean, probably they conceived their first child. And Landon and I are like, what? And he kind of went into a few of the details. But after that episode aired, everybody started messaging us. Everybody started talking about it. This is something that Michael Quinn has brought up. There have been some others, but I invited Ganesh back on to talk about that night on the Hill Cumorah. Is there more to the story?
So if a horse carriage is rocking, don't come knocking.
Right. That's right. It has to do with magic. It has to do with powerful magic based in sexuality. It's very interesting. And I have a little buggy there with hearts. I first made an image where Angel Moroni was peeping into the buggy. I thought maybe that was a little too much. So anyway, tune in Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and we're going to talk about sex, baby.
Thank goodness it wasn't Samuel Lawrence.
Yeah, really.
That has such a detailed backstory. If you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah, this just came out this morning. And this is the interview with Rainn Wilson, actor who played Dwight Schrute. And so I've been talking about this for a few weeks, but it is out there and available to watch now.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. Mormonism Live on Wednesday. We're going to have a well-known member of the audience on the show, Chuck. Oh, yeah, Chuck. Chuck is coming on. He's going to share some research with us. By the way, this isn't the first time his research is going to be talked about, but I think it's the first time he's going to be on the show to talk about it. He's got some interesting things to talk about of a scholarly bent and very, very interesting. So we're looking forward to that on Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. And then there's Friday at 8 o'clock p.m. where all the cool cats go after a long week. Mormonism After Dark with Radio Free Mormon and Bill Reel. That'll be Friday at 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. We've just put out this last Saturday the Light and Truth letter, the final chapter, the final two chapters of the Light and Truth letter, featuring me and Colby Reddish, my esteemed co-counsel. I have to tell you that somebody actually just mentioned that we inadvertently missed a chapter because we bounced around a bit in there in the middle, and we had different people on to talk about different things in which they had a certain expertise, and then we missed one. And guess what? We'll cover it. We'll cover it. We'll make it so much fun so that we will have everything done, okay, on this Light and Truth letter. So there you go. That's it. That's the show. Anything you want to say before I take us out of here? Hearing no objection. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, make a donation, please. You can go to the Mormon News. You can go to Mormonism Live if you want to donate to the me and Bill side of things and make a donation there. If you want to donate to the Rebecca side of things, you can go to mormonish.org, right, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think so. But it's always links in the show notes to any of the newscasts. If you click on more under the newscast, it's going to have a place where you can donate to the Mormon Newscast, which is you guys, and Mormon-ish, which is us. And donor box is super easy. So yeah, it's pretty easy. Okay, so that's how you donate to Mormon-ish. Thank you, everybody who have donated already. Your donations keep us newscasting every Monday night. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday, 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, for another episode of the Mormon Newscast. Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.